Laura Mitchell never imagined that the greatest betrayal of her life would come from someone who once held her hand through the darkest moments of her youth. Her older brother Jason had always been there, or at least that's how she had remembered it. Through their turbulent childhood, their father's alcoholism, and the silent struggles of their mother trying to keep the family afloat, Jason had seemed like the only constant. But life has a cruel way of showing you that memories are not always reliable indicators of present loyalty. It was a chilly morning in early March when Laura received the call from the Children's Hospital. She had just dropped Emily off at school and was sipping her coffee at the kitchen table, balancing her laptop on one side and a stack of unpaid bills on the other. The screen still showed the online confirmation for the payment she had scheduled just 2 days earlier, $38,000 wired from her savings account to the hospital's payment portal for Emily's surgery. Everything was supposed to be ready. The date was booked. The specialists were arranged. Emily had been on the waiting list for months, and now the stars had finally aligned. Or so she thought. "Miss Mitchell, I'm calling from St. Luke's Pediatric Neurology Department," the woman on the line said in a soft but cautious voice. "I'm afraid we need to inform you that your payment has not gone through. We've checked with our finance team twice. There appears to be insufficient funds in the account provided." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. She froze. Her fingers tightened around the ceramic mug, and it slipped from her hand, crashing to the floor and shattering in pieces. She barely registered the sound. I don't understand," Laura stammered. "I transferred the full amount. I saw the confirmation. Please check again. There must be a mistake." The woman offered to send over a copy of the failed transaction report, which she did within minutes. Laura's mind raced as she logged into her bank account. Her breath caught when she saw the balance, $214.27. Her hands trembled as she clicked through the account activity. The transaction was indeed there, but instead of going to the hospital's name, the money had been transferred to a private account, one she didn't recognize at first. But as she examined the details, the name leapt off the screen, Jason Mitchell. She felt the air leave her lungs. Her chest tightened. No, this couldn't be right. It had to be some kind of mistake. A misclick. A fraud. Something. Jason had been helping her with financial tasks since last year. After her divorce, he'd offered to help manage her online payments and automate some of her monthly expenses, knowing she was juggling work, parenting, and Emily's appointments. At the time, Laura had welcomed the support with gratitude and relief. She'd even added him as a trusted user on her online banking, an oversight she now felt nauseated to recall. Without waiting, she called him. He didn't pick up. She texted. Still nothing. Her hands, cold and shaking, fired off message after message. "Jason, I need to talk to you now. It's urgent. Something's wrong with the hospital payment." No response. She drove straight to his apartment, barely remembering to lock the door behind her. When she arrived, Jason opened the door in sweatpants and a hoodie, clearly caught off guard. He looked groggy, like he'd just woken up, and smelled faintly of alcohol. Laura noticed his living room was filled with open delivery boxes and a brand new OLED TV on the wall. "I've been trying to call you," she said, her voice sharper than she intended. "I was sleeping," he muttered. "What's the emergency?" Laura stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. She turned to face him and showed him her phone. The money. "Jason, the $38,000 for Emily's surgery. It went to your account. I saw your name." His expression shifted, but only slightly. He didn't look shocked or horrified. He looked cornered. "There must be some kind of mistake," he said too quickly. "Maybe the bank." "Don't lie to me," she snapped, her voice breaking. "You told me you'd help manage the account, that you'd make sure the payments went through. I trusted you, Jason. My daughter's life depends on this surgery." There was a moment, a flicker, where Laura expected him to crumble and admit it, to fall into his old role of protector and say he made a mistake. But what came next stunned at her core. "You're overreacting," he said, stepping back. "You act like she's going to live a normal life after this. Come on, Laura. Be honest. You've been pouring every penny into a kid who may never walk properly again, who's on meds 24/7. You think some surgery's going to change that?" Silence fell over the room like a guillotine. "What did you say?" she whispered. Jason scoffed and turned away. I needed the money, all right? I'm in over my head. I had debts. I had people threatening me. I figured, what? That you'd figure it out eventually. You always bounce back. Laura's phone, still recording from the moment she'd entered the room without realizing, had captured it all. The words, the tone, the complete lack of remorse. She stood there, motionless, as her world crumbled under the weight of betrayal. Her brother, her own flesh and blood, had not only stolen the one thing that could give her daughter a fighting chance, but had done it believing he was justified. He had deemed her child hopeless, disposable, not worth the effort. I can't even look at you, she said in a hollow voice, slowly backing away. You didn't just steal money, Jason. You stole time. You stole hope. He said nothing. She left, her legs barely holding her up as she got back in her car. She sat there for a long time, the phone still in her hand, the recording still playing back the echo of his words. A numbness settled into her bones, the kind of numbness that only comes when the final thread of trust is severed. That evening, after putting Emily to bed, Laura sat alone on the sofa and listened to the recording one more time. She saved it, backed it up to the cloud. Then she wrote a short email to her lawyer. The subject line was only 2 words: family betrayal. She didn't cry. Not that night. Not yet. Because deep down, she knew she would need every ounce of strength she had left. Not just for Emily, but for what was coming next. The morning after confronting Jason, Laura woke to the mechanical buzz of her alarm. But it was the weight on her chest that truly roused her. A pressure made not of flesh, but of dread. Sleep had been fragmented, her dreams filled with twisted images of Emily crying in a hospital bed and Jason walking away with her daughter's lifeline in his pocket. Each time she awoke, she'd hoped it was all a cruel hallucination, only to be reminded by the blinking light on her phone that the nightmare was real. Downstairs, the kitchen was silent. Emily was still asleep, the cartoons on the TV from the night before frozen in mid-motion. Laura sat down, holding her mug with both hands, watching the swirling steam rise. Her phone sat on the table beside her. The screen displayed the recording she had replayed so many times it was now etched in her memory. Your child is hopeless anyway. Jason's voice repeated in her mind, cold and dismissive, as if he hadn't just kicked his niece's chance at life into the dirt. The betrayal was one thing, but it was the cruelty, the absolute absence of empathy, that haunted her. By mid-morning, she had called the bank. The representative confirmed what she already knew. The money had been transferred via online banking to an account in Jason's name, using her credentials. Since he was listed as a trusted user, and the account had not been flagged for fraud, the transaction had gone through smoothly. She asked if the funds could be reversed, but the answer came swiftly, only with a court order or his explicit consent. And Jason wasn't answering her calls anymore. Laura reached out to a lawyer, Janine Becker, a sharp but empathetic woman she'd once met at a local legal aid fundraiser. After explaining the situation and sending the recording, Janine scheduled a meeting that same afternoon. Laura arranged for her neighbor to watch Emily and drove to the downtown office in a blur of traffic lights and panic. Janine listened in silence as Laura explained everything: her daughter's condition, the savings, Jason's involvement, and the damning audio. She didn't interrupt once. When Laura finished, Janine leaned back, steepling her fingers. You have proof, she said calmly. And that's more than most people have in family financial disputes. This isn't just emotional. It's actionable. He accessed your account and redirected funds for personal use under the pretense of managing them for your daughter's medical treatment. That's financial abuse and fraud. Laura swallowed. But he's my brother. I don't want to destroy him. I just want the money back. Janine gave her a sympathetic look, the kind that says she's heard that phrase too many times from clients who eventually realize some people destroy themselves. You won't destroy him, Laura. He made choices. You're just refusing to be the one paying for them. They discussed options: a civil suit for the recovery of funds, a criminal complaint, though Laura was hesitant, protective injunctions to prevent him from accessing her accounts again. Janine also recommended locking down every financial portal Laura used, password changes, multi-factor authentication, removing Jason's access everywhere. That evening, Laura followed every instruction with robotic precision, severing every digital tie Jason had to her life. But the emotional ties were harder. The following day, Laura visited her aunt, Jason's godmother, and one of the few family members she still had a warm relationship with. She needed someone to talk to. Someone who remembered the old Jason, the big brother who used to read her bedtime stories and walk her home from school. Aunt Rose welcomed her with open arms and chamomile tea. Laura didn't mention the theft at first, only Emily's delayed surgery and the pressure she was under. But when Rose asked how Jason was helping, Laura's eyes filled with tears. "He stole the money, Rose," she said quietly. "All of it." The room went still. "I trusted him with my bank account. He said he'd handle the hospital payments. But instead, he transferred it to himself. And when I confronted him, he said Emily was hopeless, that I was wasting money trying to save her." Rose's hand went to her mouth. "Oh God, I have it recorded. I didn't mean to. It just happened. My phone was in my pocket, but I listened to it again and again. And he meant it." Laura had never seen her aunt so shaken. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Rose whispered, "He's not the boy I remember. Maybe he hasn't been for a long time." That evening, Laura sat at her desk and stared at the phone again. She transferred the audio file to her laptop. It was crystal clear, his voice, his tone, the contempt. Her lawyer had suggested keeping it confidential for now, using it strategically in court or during mediation. But Laura's instincts wrestled with her legal counsel. What if this didn't just happen to her? What if Jason had done this to others? She remembered times he'd borrowed money from their mother before she died. The check her cousin mentioned disappearing. The friends he no longer spoke to. The next morning, Laura took a risk. She emailed the audio clip anonymously to a private Facebook support group for single parents of children with disabilities, a group she'd joined years ago but rarely posted in. She didn't include names. She just wrote a caption, "What would you do if this was your brother?" and attached the file. The response was immediate. Dozens of parents responded, some with sympathy, some with rage. Many shared their own horror stories, family members who stole, undermined, manipulated. Some messaged her privately offering advice, encouragement, even donations. Laura didn't ask for help, but the flood of support cracked something inside her that had been frozen solid. She wasn't alone. One message stood out, a woman named Claire, who worked for a parenting podcast and blog that had recently started a segment on financial exploitation. She asked if Laura would be willing to share her story, still anonymously, if needed. Just the facts, just the pain and the lesson. Laura hesitated for a day. Then she replied, yes. The interview was recorded by voice only, edited to protect identities. Laura told her story, how she worked 2 jobs, saved every dollar for Emily's treatment, trusted her brother, and watched it all disappear. She included the quote, "Your child is hopeless anyway." The host didn't react, just let it land like a brick in silence. The episode aired a week later. Within 48 hours, it had 10,000 downloads. Within 3 days, 40,000. Listeners were outraged. Parents wrote in. Some tried to guess who Jason was. Laura said nothing, but Jason must have heard, because he finally called her. She didn't pick up. Instead, she played his message on loop. His voice was panicked, defensive, disjointed. "You didn't have to go public. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I said some things I didn't mean. I'll find a way to fix it." But he didn't say he was sorry. Not once. Later that week, Janine filed the civil suit. Laura stared at the court papers, her hand steady now. The fear was still there, but no longer paralyzing. It had transformed into something else. Something sharper. She wasn't the scared little sister anymore. She was Emily's mother, and she was going to war. The courthouse was colder than Laura expected, not just in temperature, but in its mood, sterile, procedural, indifferent to the stories unfolding within its walls. She sat on a wooden bench in the hallway outside the hearing room, her hands wrapped tightly around a thermos of black coffee she had barely touched. She glanced at her watch. Jason was late. Of course he was. That had always been his way. Walking in last minute, pretending the world owed him the courtesy of waiting. Across from her sat Janine Becker, dressed immaculately as always, reviewing her notes with a calm that Laura admired and envied. The civil lawsuit they had filed against Jason was straightforward in the eyes of the law. Misappropriation of funds, breach of fiduciary trust, and emotional damages related to the financial abuse. But emotionally, nothing about it felt simple. This wasn't some faceless thief she was prosecuting. It was the boy who had once scared away bullies from her third-grade classroom. The man who had driven her to the hospital the night Emily was born. But now, he was the man who took everything she had, her money, her trust, and nearly her daughter's chance at life. When Jason finally arrived, it was with a nervous smile and a cheap blazer that did nothing to hide his unease. His lawyer trailed behind him, looking slightly irritated, as if even he had tired of Jason's attempts to justify the unjustifiable. Jason avoided Laura's eyes as he sat down, fiddling with his tie. She didn't look away. She wanted him to feel her gaze, to know that she wasn't the same sister who once forgave every lie, who once believed every half-hearted apology. The hearing was short, preliminary. Jason's attorney requested mediation before trial, which Janine had anticipated. Laura agreed, on the condition that the mediator hear the recording first. She wanted it entered into the record. She wanted Jason to listen to his own voice in a legal setting, to hear his words echoed back in a room where truth had consequences. The mediator, a middle-aged man with tired eyes and an air of practiced patience, asked to hear the audio in private first. Janine handed over the file. 10 minutes later, he returned with a grim expression. "I believe mediation is possible," he said, "but let me be frank. This is one of the most egregious betrayals of familial trust I've encountered in recent years. Mr. Mitchell," he turned to Jason, "your sister has ample grounds for both civil and criminal action." Jason didn't respond. His lawyer whispered something into his ear, and he nodded, pale and visibly sweating. The mediation session took place 2 weeks later, in a conference room where the stakes fell higher than they had in court. By then, the podcast Laura had participated in had gained even more traction. A popular journalist had picked up the story, still anonymized, still careful. But the "quote your child is hopeless anyway" had become a rallying cry in online parenting communities. It wasn't about Emily anymore. It was about every child written off by someone who should have loved them. It was about every parent gaslight by family. The night before the mediation, Laura received an email from the journalist who had written the article. He had learned of Jason's identity through a tip. Someone recognized the voice in the recording. The journalist asked for permission to reveal names, citing public interest and the wave of social support the story had inspired. Laura didn't respond right away. She stared at the message for hours, torn between a desire for justice and fear of backlash. But that same night, Emily had a seizure. It wasn't long, 40 seconds according to the doctor, but it was enough to remind Laura what this was all about. Her daughter, her life, her future, and how close it all came to being taken away. The next morning, Laura responded to the journalist. "Yes, you have my permission." During the mediation, Jason looked worn, his usual bravado gone. Janine presented the bank records, the recording, and a signed affidavit from Laura's financial counselor confirming that Jason had access to her online accounts. The mediator asked Jason directly if he denied any of it. He didn't. "I made a mistake," he said softly, eyes fixed on the table. "I had debts. I wasn't thinking straight." "Did you mean what you said about Emily?" the mediator asked. Jason looked up, meeting Laura's eyes for the first time. She held his gaze, refusing to look away. "No," he whispered. "I didn't mean it." Laura leaned forward. "Then why did you say it, Jason? Why was that the first thing you thought of when I caught you?" "Not an apology. Not concern. Just that she wasn't worth it." He opened his mouth, but no words came. The silence said enough. Janine pushed forward with terms: a court-ordered repayment plan, wage garnishment if necessary, and a restraining order preventing Jason from accessing any accounts related to Laura or Emily. Jason's lawyer requested leniency, no police charges. Laura agreed, on the condition that Jason issue a formal written apology, recorded and shared publicly. Janine had insisted on that point, not for vengeance, but for closure. Jason hesitated, but ultimately agreed. He didn't want a criminal record. He didn't want to be canceled. He didn't want to lose what little was left of his image. The apology video was recorded the following week. Jason sat in front of a plain wall, his face drawn and tired. He admitted to the theft, to the betrayal, and he called his words about Emily shameful and inexcusable. The video was posted on the same parenting forum where Laura had first shared the anonymous recording. It went viral within hours. The journalist published the full story the next day, names included. Messages poured in. Some hateful, directed at Jason. Others sympathetic, directed at Laura and Emily. Donations began arriving on a fundraiser page a friend had set up for Emily's rescheduled surgery. Laura hadn't asked for money, but it came anyway. From strangers, from parents, from people who had once been hurt by their own family. She read each message carefully, often with Emily sleeping beside her, the little girl's hand curled around her arm. Some of the stories were heartbreaking. Siblings who stole inheritances, uncles who manipulated wills, cousins who took advantage of aging grandparents. It was a sea of pain, but also a wave of solidarity. One message stood out. It was from a mother in Texas who wrote, "Your story gave me the courage to finally take legal action against my brother. I've been silent for years. No more. Thank you." Laura cried when she read that one. By the time the court finalized the mediated settlement, Jason had moved to a different city. He sent a letter, unopened, in the mail. Laura placed it in a drawer. Maybe someday she'd read it. Maybe not. For now, she was focused on Emily's second chance. The hospital accepted the partial payment, combined from Jason's restitution and the online donations, and confirmed a surgery date. Laura sat with the coordinator, hands trembling as she signed the new paperwork. It was happening. It was real. As she walked out of the hospital that day, the sun warming her face, she felt something shift. It wasn't happiness. Too much had happened for that. But it was peace. A quiet knowing that she had done everything she could. That she had turned her pain into purpose. That she had stood up, not just for her daughter, but for herself. And no one would ever take that from her again. The morning of the surgery arrived with a strange kind of calm. Laura had expected to feel frantic, maybe even paralyzed with fear, but instead, she felt focused, sharpened. Every minute had been accounted for, every bag packed the night before. Emily's favorite stuffed elephant, her tablet loaded with bedtime stories, a framed photo of her and her mom at the zoo. Laura had made sure to pack it all. The hospital room was sterile, yes, but Laura had decorated it quietly while Emily was in pre-op assessments. A soft pink blanket draped over the bed. Stickers of stars and clouds on the four-pole. It didn't make the room less clinical, but it made it theirs. Emily sat on the edge of the bed in her tiny hospital gown, her legs swinging, the tips of her socks just brushing the floor. She looked tired, but not scared. There was a peacefulness in her eyes, a trust that only children possess when they still believe the world can be safe if their mother holds their hand. "Will it hurt?" she asked softly, clutching the elephant. Maybe a little afterward, Laura answered honestly, brushing her daughter's bangs aside. "But they'll give you medicine, and I'll be here when you wake up." Emily nodded and leaned her head on Laura's shoulder. That simple gesture, so innocent, so full of faith, nearly undid Laura completely. She blinked away the tears. Not now. When the surgical team arrived to take Emily to the operating room, Laura kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, "Be brave for me. Okay?" Emily gave a small smile and squeezed her elephant tighter as they wheeled her away. The waiting was agony. 6 hours. That's how long the surgery lasted. Laura didn't sit once. She paced, drank coffee she couldn't taste, and scrolled through messages of support that had flooded her inbox. There were hundreds now, people from all over the country, even abroad. Some had sent drawings, poems, videos of their children wishing Emily well. Others wrote long, raw confessions about their own experiences with betrayal, illness, or both. Laura read each one like a prayer. Janine texted mid-morning to say that Jason's second restitution payment had arrived on schedule. It was a short message. No sympathy, no commentary. But Laura appreciated it for what it was, closure. Quiet and administrative, yet profoundly satisfying. The surgeon finally emerged in scrubs, her expression calm but serious. Laura stood before the woman, even spoke. The surgery was successful, the doctor said. We were able to remove the pressure from the affected area and stabilize the nerve compression. She's in recovery now. It'll be a long road, but the worst part is behind you. Behind us. Laura nearly collapsed in relief. Her knees buckled slightly, and she covered her face with both hands, exhaling years of fear in one shuddering breath. When she was finally allowed to see Emily, the little girl was pale and groggy but stable. A soft beep echoed in rhythm with her pulse. Her eyelids fluttered open when Laura spoke her name. "You did so good, sweetheart," Laura whispered. "I'm so proud of you." Emily gave the faintest smile. Her fingers reached out blindly, and Laura took them, holding them like they were sacred. In the days that followed, Emily's recovery moved slowly but surely. The nurses adored her. The physiotherapists, who had read her story in the news, treated her like royalty. The staff even organized a small surprise party in her room with balloons and cupcakes. Emily giggled when they brought in a paper crown and called her the bravest girl in the ward. Outside of the hospital, the ripple effect of Jason's public confession continued. Laura tried to ignore it, but it reached her even through hospital walls. A national morning show contacted her for an interview. She declined. She didn't want to turn her life into content. Not now. Maybe not ever. But she agreed to let them do a short segment about the importance of medical crowdfunding and the hidden epidemic of financial abuse among families. The host read a message from Laura on air, thanking donors and reminding viewers that silence can be more dangerous than betrayal. 2 weeks later, Laura and Emily returned home. The apartment, modest but filled with warmth, welcomed them like an old friend. The first night back, Laura cooked Emily's favorite, chicken and rice with too much cheese, and they ate it in pajamas on the couch, watching cartoons and laughing until Emily fell asleep in Laura's lap. In the quiet that followed, Laura sat for a long time, just watching her daughter breathe. She thought of all that had been lost, her faith in her brother, the innocence of family bonds, the months wasted wondering if help would come. But more than anything, she thought about what had survived, her strength, her daughter's life, and a community of strangers who had wrapped their arms around them when blood had turned cold. One evening, months later, Laura received a letter in the mail. It was in Jason's handwriting. She hesitated. For a long moment, she considered throwing it away unopened. But curiosity, or maybe the last residue of sibling hope, made her tear the envelope. The letter was handwritten, several pages. Jason apologized, not just for stealing the money, but for who he had become. He confessed to gambling, to lying, to hating himself more than he'd ever admitted. He said therapy had started to peel back the layers of denial, and that he finally understood what he'd done, not only to Laura, but to Emily. "I don't expect forgiveness," he wrote, "but I hope someday you can look back and know I wasn't proud of it. I am ashamed. Deeply." Laura folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. She didn't cry. Not out of anger, just clarity. Jason's remorse, even if sincere, wouldn't undo the past. But it might make his future a little more honest. And that was enough for her. Spring arrived with its usual quiet majesty. Flowers bloomed along the windowsill, and Emily began walking short distances without support. Her laughter filled the apartment again, unburdened, vibrant. Laura enrolled in an online course in nonprofit management. She had an idea to create an organization that helped single parents navigate complex financial aid systems and legal protections. It was just a thought at first, but it grew stronger each week. She called it the Second Chance Fund. A year later, the foundation had helped dozens of families secure treatment, education, and legal guidance. Laura was invited to speak at a local conference. This time, she accepted. Her story wasn't just personal anymore. It was powerful. At the podium, she spoke simply. "I once thought strength was about surviving silently. Now I know it's about speaking even when your voice shakes. My daughter is alive today because of the generosity of strangers and because I stopped being afraid of making others uncomfortable with the truth." The crowd rose in applause. Back at home, Emily had left her a crayon drawing on the fridge. It showed two stick figures holding hands, standing on a green hill under a yellow sun. Above them, written in uneven but determined letters, "Me and Mommy beat the storm." And they had, not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with truth, love, and the courage to never give up, even when the betrayal came from the one who once promised to protect you. The video of Jason's confession didn't just change their family's fate. It saved a little girl's life, and it gave her mother the strength to help others rewrite their own stories. One voice, one truth, one second chance at a time.